Hello and welcome to Quantum Human Revelations. I'm Trudy, I'm White Star Soul Guidance, and I'm here to share more of part 2 of what we started a few weeks ago. So I'm sorry I was sick in between and I couldn't do the week after. So I've kind of held you with, is it anticipation, as they say? So I'm still a bit croaky, so excuse me when I drink a little bit, but grab yourselves a drink, a cup of tea, or whatever your tipple is this time of the evening, and settle down with me as we talk a bit more about time, karma, and DNA. So I hope you've all been well in the last few weeks, and thank you to those who have sent me messages to get well. They're much appreciated. And I want to talk about the merkaba today a bit as well. So I want to talk about energy a bit today as well. So when you're ready, just think of this time as when we start tuning into what we want our lives to be, and allow my words to just awaken parts of you, because my light language is what I speak. It's normal words to activate people, to awaken their quantum human so that they can start seeing the gifts that they have within them. And there are so many ways that you can take the information I'm presenting every week, and what I'm going to be asking you in a moment is, if you were watching the last episode, then what did you pioneer, or what have you kind of decided to become the pioneer of since I saw you last week when we were talking about the Aquarian age and stepping into being a visionary and a pioneer? What are you pioneering since we spoke last time? So I'll give you a moment to think about that while you're all settling down. But grab a journal as well. I'm just going to check the YouTube's all working and that I can see the messages, which it often doesn't show me. Let's see if I can get going there. So what have you been pioneering since I saw you last time? Okay, got that. Cool. So the chat seems to be up on YouTube. So I'll say, sorry, I didn't see you guys last time. As you can hear, I'm still a bit croaky, so I'm still recovering. I had a cold or a flu or a COVID, who knows, one of those things. And I think, at this time when the energies are quite high, for me, I know that I tend to get more vulnerable because my body is going through all these upgrades and changes. So it can make us feel a little bit more vulnerable to viruses and things. So I'm not surprised, but it wasn't too bad overall. So what were you pioneering as part of the Aquarius energy last time we spoke? What energy did you decide that you were going to hold and become responsible for? What did you feel maybe a new idea that you were going to share, or a new project you were going to start? Have any of you had any thoughts about that since I saw you last time? I might get a cat join us in a minute. I just heard him go meow. So last week we were talking about the shift. There's been quite a big, huge shift since we started. It's been very much back in July, we spoke about the earthquake and how the ground was shaking, and we had to find this kind of stable point that we could stand on, which then kind of emerged into the floods of August, of these emotional floods, and how we navigated that landscape, I suppose, when we had our head underwater. Maybe we were having a lot of emotional experiences ourselves. Maybe it was the people around us having these emotional explosions, but just how were you managing that time? Because this aspect of the emotional flood was very much an opportunity. I know it always sounds odd, but it's a bit like homeopathy, get a bit of the opposite to what you need to heal. And this was very much the emotional flood was going to be clues and insights for you to decide what you needed to fix in your life. Because I missed the 8-8, or missed you guys on the 8-8 because I was sick. But that 8-8 gateway really brought through that sovereignty, pioneering kind of energy. But it's really interesting because normally it's very much a leader, royal kind of energy. But this time it added a new element. It added in adventurer. And it came right down to King Arthur was the perfect analogy for what that energy was representing. That ability to go on quests, to step out of your comfort zone for a bigger purpose. So it's moving away from that kind of king and queen in an ivory tower, looking at their domain, and stepping out and getting your hands dirty and actually making things happen for yourself. And that was the energy of the 8-8. And that whole kind of Arthur legend, when I looked into it more, became more and more interesting, because he pulls his sword, which is him reclaiming his power. One of the crystals we were working with, and I probably say this wrong, but it was clevelandite, that had this kind of safe passage energy, which it was almost saying that it could take all the negative things in front of you and show you the life-affirming version of them. And that kind of represented Merlin for me, as that kind of guide, that wizard, that prophet that could take the present, the past, the future, and weave it in a way that you could then see the purpose laying out in front of you. And then, of course, we had the quest was for the Holy Grail, which is time. So it kind of all fitted in nicely into that analogy. So I don't know how many of you guys, I was like a huge King Arthur fan as a kid and read all the books, because being Welsh, it was part of our mythology as well. So we had quite a lot of Welsh Celtic books on King Arthur type stories. So I don't know if any of you guys are all into King Arthur, or if you know the story very well. But what came up after that was going back to these emotions of betrayal, rejection, and abandonment. I felt those quite strongly over the portal. And I think, well, here's a question. How many of you listening now have had this feeling that you've been abandoned, or that you've been rejected or betrayed on some big level? Is this something that we can all sense? Is it all part of our human existence, maybe? So if anybody's chatting to me on YouTube, I'm not seeing the comments yet, so I'm just keeping an eye on that. But just notice how, when you think of the betrayal, the rejection, the abandonment, and part of King Arthur's journey is to be crowned as the king, and stepping up into that, taking a rightful place, if that makes sense. You know, he wasn't king at the time. He was a child when he pulls the sword. He's not anticipated. But also there's that Christianity side to it. And I discovered that Merlin was actually, his origins were supposed to be demonic. And yet somehow he took that power of what he was able to do and still helped King Arthur claim his crown. And if we talk of Christianity as my I am presence and the Christ consciousness, then you can kind of see that Merlin was instrumental in King Arthur claiming his I am presence, I guess. So that kind of bad but good energy is something else that I've noticed that's been coming up this month. And it kind of goes along to the betrayal, rejection, abandonment. Oh, yes, we got a message come through. Every day, Asha. Thank you. That's interesting you said this. I channeled a lot of info on that myth around the time. Yeah. And I actually found somebody who was channeling that a few years ago around that time, because I thought it was a current video I was watching. And when I looked, I think it was 2021. So this isn't the first time that the Lion Gateways brought through a King Arthur kind of theme. Now, this kind of betrayal, rejection, abandonment really struck home to me on a level of, do we feel betrayed that we were kicked out of source and sent down to earth? And that's quite a big wound. You know, I've worked on various wounds, like, you know, we all know the witch wound. Last Christmas, I was helping people with the fall of Atlantis and Lemuria and any ancient civilization where they'd accidentally been involved in the Armageddon of that whole experience, and how they were still holding on to that fear of not stepping into their power because they remembered what happened when Atlantis fell. So I've helped people with that wound. But this wound now is sounding like that original wound of being kicked out of source, kicked out of heaven, if you want to call it that, and starting to sense into feeling betrayed or abandoned and rejected. And a lot of us as humans have that kind of feeling with either our parents or our loved ones or our lover or our boyfriend or our husband, girlfriends. You know, it's all of that kind of plays into it. But what if the original wound came from that departing source? Which I think is an interesting time for me to kind of pick up on that, because we're moving into the full moon of Pisces, which is that reconnecting us back up into the ether, and understanding that whole cycle was for us to learn, and we weren't rejected or abandoned. We were sent on an adventure. Now, I'm sure many of us talk about, and I've done a video on this, on the last incarnation. You know, a lot of us feel like we're here, we're supposed to do something, then we just can't wait to go home. And I've started challenging that and saying, well, what if it's not about us wanting to go home, but us being the adventurer, coming down to earth to learn how to hold our multidimensional soul in a human body and to manage those two frequencies to make this quantum human, I'm just using that as a term, but this perfect balance of 3D, 5D energy which I've been calling the quantum human. And if that's the case, then, we're just coming to the end of the cycle. The 8-8 is just coming before that. We've just gone through the Aquarius full moon with the pioneering kind of utopian view of life. And then we're going to go back up to kind of do a life review at Pisces before then coming back round and trying to be a better human the next time round. So that original wound then, and I like it because whenever I watch TV, I always get clues coming through on the TV. And for some bizarre reason, this week I decided to watch Lucifer, the program Lucifer. And that's exactly what he's going through. As the fallen angel, he's going through the abandonment of his father and the rejection and the betrayal of the whole thing. Like, why? He's asking why. And as I was watching that, I could kind of connect to that frequency. I could feel it inside me, like, why was I kicked out? On the other hand, I was like, but I know I'm here on an adventure. So I was wondering if maybe part of this flood that we were talking about last week, this flood of emotions, was for us to finally heal this original wound of betrayal, of abandonment and rejection. So I just thought I'd add that in. And that was my 8-8 realization, is how are we going to purify? Now, we've been talking about the merkaba a lot, and that's quite important to this cleansing. And again, it was quite interesting. I started digging deeper because everything I get is a download. It's like a little snippet. And then I have to do the research and jump down all the rabbit holes to really get a feeling of what that means if things were not as true as I thought they were. Yeah, it's always that critical questioning, always asking more questions to understand the bigger picture. So I kind of looked a little bit more into this, the chariot of the body. And all the symbology and the descriptions of it were very much the celestial chariot being pulled by angels, looking in the 4 directions, north, south, east, west. But it didn't sound very much an earthly chariot. And I think a lot of what I was doing with the merkaba last week, the week before, was bringing in more earth particles into it again, because we're always trying to bring this heaven on earth closer to each other as our adventure. That's what I feel that we're here to do. Some of us have come from other parts of the galaxy even, and we're here to bring these two energies together so that we can help the human body evolve to hold more of our multidimensional soul. And this merkaba seems to be relevant to that. And it's just an energetic. It was quite mystified. There were only certain people who were allowed. There were only certain people who were allowed to speak about the merkaba. It was very mystified. And I found that quite interesting as why it was so veiled. And I like things when they're veiled coming to the open, because I think this is something important for us all to learn. So this merkaba becomes the vehicle that we travel in. So if we've got the King Arthur story, the Holy Grail, timelessness, which we were talking about last week with time, then the merkaba is key to that in some form. So the way it felt was that the energies were kind of like karma was a glue, and that this glue was what was holding memories of time in place. Because if we've got these old wounds, it's stopping us move forward in our lives. It's stopping us become that Aquarius pioneer, that adventurer, the fool on the fool's journey, being able to step in and say, why not? Let's try something different this time, because you haven't got the experiences of things that went wrong in the past. And it's getting that glue undone so we can move forward. And I think that's where the particle that I spoke about last time is also coming into play. It's almost like this amino acid has the ability to shift our DNA and the memories in our DNA and cancel it out so that we can go back to this timelessness. And that then made me think, well, if time isn't linear, then if we have karma and time isn't linear, and we talk about it's payback for the past, and the past doesn't exist, then that means that karmic thing isn't about the past, it's all happening now, and therefore it's all in our control to change. So if we can kind of clean out our merkaba, clear it, purify it, remove all false illusions, get us to believe that we can walk this earth in a different way, I think that's going to be part to us releasing this karmic, our old karmic debt then effectively, so that we can become able to start afresh again. Now with the time aspect, we know that whatever you did yesterday is creating a future, and each, our future is created by taking one step at a time and by the decisions we make each day. And I wanted to talk a bit more about that time. So yes, I did see I froze for a second. I hope I repeated that bit that I froze. So before I go on to that time, we'll just see. So Jenny's saying she doesn't know the King Arthur story. I think it's worth reading up on that and getting familiar with it, because I think it's a good analogy for what we're going through right now. And yes, she's saying she feels that deep betrayal energy of the original wound. Yeah, because I thought the original wound came at the Garden of Eden, and I've done some work on that. But this one feels like there was one even before that. But I suppose that's the thing. There's always something before. We've had so many times and existences. So when we talk about timelines, there's a kind of when we do past lives, then let's assume there's one single timeline, and we do past lives, we go back along that timeline. But there are also parallel timelines, and there are multiples of these. And I think that these parallel timelines aren't just simply branches. Some of them are completely separate, that they've never touched. And I feel like what we do is sometimes, especially depending on the type of person we are or the memories that we have, some of us are time walkers who are able to split ourselves, not because of trauma or some of the other reasons that we do soul retrievals for, but we consciously split ourselves onto these parallel timelines to have multiple experiences at the same time and then feed back to us during dream time. So it's kind of like having 5 versions of me testing out 5 different business ideas and then feeding back to me all the different options as I go. Sometimes we know that those are still happening and we still get those ideas, and other times we get that feeling like we've got ghosts maybe coming into our lives, or that we've got visions that don't match up, but they're like overlapping visions that seem to be out of time. But I think these are these parallel lives that we can create. So part of timelessness would be to say, well, if we had that timeline and we went back and cleared all the experiences we had, now we don't want to lose the lessons, they're important, but if we can lose the emotional glue, then where would we be now? What would we do now based on that glue being dissolved from the past? So yes, we might remember that we were there at the fall of Atlantis and that everything crashed. But if we didn't feel the guilt or the shame or the fear of our power from it, and instead we learned what worked and what didn't work, would we then be able to apply ourselves differently now? We are not the same as we were then. We've matured, we've learned new things, we've learned to use our powers in different ways. We've learned to use our skills in different ways. So if we can see that as our timeline, then this timelessness, or the Holy Grail, or eternal youth, if we are already in all of these multiple phases of our life, the parallel, the past, the future, all at the same time, are we already in timelessness? Are we already, do we already hold the Holy Grail? Are we it? And of course, all that time thing I was doing, researching over the last few weeks, was saying that we are time itself. It's in our DNA. That the construct that we see time through was a group agreement, but we don't need to tie into that group if we don't want. So that's the kind of the time aspect that I think is shifting, and why King Arthur and the Holy Grail and the Fountain of Youth all kind of fit. As humans, we probably took the Holy Grail and the Fountain of Youth to be some sort of way that the human body didn't age, but who says that aging is a bad thing? It's illness and other issues that are what makes us inactive as we get older, but there are plenty of older people who are still very active. So, aging has to be looked at from a new perspective. But if we looked at eternal youthfulness from we are everything, we are every age, we are at many different points in our life at multiple times, at simultaneous times, then are we really already in that eternal youth? And then is that in our DNA? And is that what's being unlocked? Is the memory of how to navigate these timelines in this way and be able to access those parallel paths and start bringing that knowledge in and remembering that's what we've done. So let's see what's going on. Yeah, you get messages on Facebook. Yeah, Judy said it really well. Time does not pass, we pass. Exactly. Because time, memories, karma are all related. Because karma is something you did in the past that has to be rectified now. If you take away the past, then what is it? If memories are things we remember from the past, and again, we take away time, what is a memory? if not just a lesson. So that's what I've got with the timelessness aspect and the Holy Grail and the King Arthur. But Merlin as well is this good and bad, you know, because, you know, when we have memories, the memories that stick with us most are the ones that had the biggest, strongest emotion, which is either extreme happiness or extreme sadness. So that kind of gives you the good and the bad aspect, you know, that a lot of times we think our lives have been really, really bad, but the percentage of time that was really, really bad based on the overall is probably quite small. But because we're only comparing extremely good with extremely bad, all the mundane in between is not counted. And therefore, it kind of alters the statistics a little bit and it kind of knocks it off center. So just think of that bad bit, all the bad things that are stopping you moving forward in your life, that are preventing you taking the job you want, or changing the job into something else, or taking the adventure you want, or going on that quest. It's probably maybe 10% of your life that's made that up. And it's about now that timelessness shifting into an awareness of all the other aspects of your life where things were boring or dull or nothing much was happening, but things were still moving forward. So that's the kind of the time that I wanted to talk about last time. So Judy said, been through the abandonment and betrayal and now on the adventure. It's a bit daunting, but yeah, I'm glad you're saying that. You say it's both my clarification, but it's good to have it coming back as well, because I was quite surprised when I heard those words coming through and I could feel the kind of tears rising up with it. It was like, where's this coming from? It's like another layer again, as we always go through this. So I talked a bit about last time, just to recap, you know, how I felt like on a time level, the world is shifting, the axis of the world is shifting, that time might actually be physically changing. I did a big deep dive on trying to understand what a day felt like, what a year felt like. I even discovered something called the galactic tick, which somebody's trying to do. I think it's September 9th is the 237th or 239th galactic tick. Somebody's come up with a way of trying to create like a galactic second, which is the whole year cycle being the time it takes our solar system to go around the Milky Way. And that one tick is 1 second of that clock. And it's about 633 days for one of those galactic ticks. So I kind of been playing with all of that and just trying to open my mind, because that's all we can do with this information, is let it lead us into deeper questioning, let us view things from a different perspective. And when we do that, we start to shift our consciousness and start seeing things differently. And that's the whole point of raising our consciousness, is just raising that awareness. So I have got a meditation that I've done, but my voice is a bit croaky to do it yet. But as soon as I've done that, I will publish it for you guys to see. But it was quite interesting, you know, trying to visualize what a day looked like, what a night looked like, what a month looked like on a cosmic clock level of the planetary movements. I kind of knew what it was, but actually visualizing it took a little bit more focus. And it was really quite fascinating, the journey that I took on that. So hopefully that's something you can all look forward to when I finish it. So with King Arthur, has anybody else got any insights that brings to mind as you think about time and karma and quests and adventurer and betrayal and rejection? It's kind of like, isn't it always the same, that the answers are always there in plain sight? It's just we don't always see the answer. It's quite amazing when you think of it that way. Oh, my cat's come to say hello, but he's got just his back end. So a couple of people were asking me about the merkaba, particularly last time. So it's interesting whether it's an 8-pointed, a 6-pointed star, or a 12. Mine's a 12-pointed star I work with. And it's my crystal, which I keep meaning to have to hand, but I haven't got it here. And it kind of felt like plugging it into new particles was the way to upgrade it, to become more attuned to the new earth, heaven on earth agenda, to bring it into alignment now, as you know, like heaven frequencies are usually quite higher, the earth are more dense. Well, they're both now coming together as part of the new earth shift. But equally, our merkaba needs to be constantly upgraded too, as these frequencies start coming into alignment. It's almost like I often see them as like a left and a right geometric shape, and they've been kind of like never fitting together, and now slowly they're starting to integrate, they're twisting, they're turning, they're slotting into each other. to create as above, below in every aspect of us, you know, from a chakra, from an aura, from a merkaba. It's that kind of, the two are now starting to fit together, which brings in with it new gifts and new powers and new abilities. And I think that's partly why we're getting more awakening quantum humans, is because of these shifts and the way these energies are coming together. But equally, you know, I know that from the work I do with my group in the membership privately, it's not always something you could do on your own. So if you can't find a group to work with, or if you want to, you know, take what I say here and then start researching it, but sometimes it just makes the path a little quicker, like any adventurer, you know. If you're going into the forest, you can either go completely in blind and just say, I'm going to spend the next 2 years exploring, or if you want to get out the other side by Christmas, then you want to take a guide that will take you to the highlights and then lead you out. That's what people like me do. You know, that's our job as a soul guide, is to help take you through, have the experiences, and then speed the process up so you can get where you want to go a bit quicker. So that's the aim with something like the merkaba. Specifically, it seems like find somebody who understands it and understands where you're at with yours, and then how to put the two together so that you can activate you and awaken more of your abilities. Wow, time's gone already. It goes so quick. Oh, did I cover everything? Let me see. So yeah, we talked about karma. The karmic loop is broken. We talked about Saturn being called Cronus last time, and the reprogramming of the DNA. Yeah, I think that's everything. I think Venus for me is also something to watch this month, because it has time specialists, with the Mayans kind of knew Venus as the time specialist. And not only from a like a calendar time, like a human time, but also from a cosmic perspective. And I guess with all of these particles and like amino acids waking us up, and again, I haven't got all my numbers here, I should have pulled them out really, but I think it says something like 230 million years for the solar system to make one loop of the Milky Way. So in our lifetime, we're never going to experience the whole of the Milky Way, but we're never going to be where we were. We're going to be in a different part of space. And even though our constellations are only slightly moving, like on the clock around us, they're only slightly moving in our lifetime, over the thousands of years, they have shifted, but we've all moved into different areas of stars. And also that'll bring in different radiation, different gamma rays, different particles and stardust, meteors, you know, it's going to bring in lots of these elements on a physical layer, not just on an energetic layer. And I think the Mayans kind of understood that, because each of their days was related to a different amino acid. So it was as if, as the month was progressing, as we moved through a different cosmic soup, that we were picking up new elements, and therefore we had an opportunity to integrate that and to evolve with that. And it kind of feels like that's part of what's happening in order to help us awaken and understand ourselves, is this, as we move through the solar system, through the galactic years, we're shifting through this, then we really are being exposed to new aspects, new chemicals, new gases, new particles, whatever you want to call them, all the time, that is going to be impacting us and Earth. And, you know, even if it doesn't impact us directly, it'll impact the Earth, which will then impact us. So there's this complex dance going on, I guess, and karma and time and soul purpose and this whole change that's come through this year, I think has this backdrop that's happening around us that perhaps we've not been paying as much attention to, that is a much more physical interpretation of everything. So if that made sense to people, then I know it's a complicated subject. It'll probably make more sense in 6 months' time. But I do feel that there's something big shifting, you know. Everybody I've spoken to has said time is speeding up. They're noticing that, like, I don't know about you guys, but I've noticed that for August, it seems to be awfully dark now at, well, what time is it now? It's only 8:30, and it'll be dark by 9. And I wasn't expecting it to be dark until 9:30 at this time, at least for another couple of weeks. I know it gets less 5 minutes each day, but some nights it's been dark before 9. I know the clouds and things, but still, it feels more like September than it does August. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say, you know, is that it already feels like something shifted, and our calendars and our seasons are all based off of a man-made calendar, based off where we were in the universe thousands of years ago, and we're not there now. So who knows how that impacts how the Earth rotates, how the the solar cycles and the lunar cycles are all going to be impacted by this as we move around the Milky Way. And I think for me, that was kind of a way to connect with the timelessness of being a human, I think. Oh, hi, Dana. I keep saying Dana. So much love to you too. I hope you haven't got any cows this time jumping over the moon. Cool. You've just caught me at the end, though. I'm just finishing. So I'm going to leave you with Judy's words. Time does not pass. We pass. I think that's a nice ending to have. The way she said that, it summarizes it all. And as I say, go and research the Holy Grail and the story of King Arthur. I think that might be a good story. I don't know about you guys, but when I read a book that has a past life connection for me or a consciousness connection, I kind of feel my brain starts clicking and I start getting aha moments. So do read that book and see how that comes up. And yeah, let's see if we can work out a way to start healing that betrayal, rejection, and abandonment that comes from leaving source and coming to earth and seeing earth as an adventure, not somewhere we're desperate to get away from, but where we're here to make new things happen instead. Oops, hang on. Cool. All right, so somebody's just joining me for the Zoom. So that's it for this week. I think I'll be seeing you next week, but then Bank Holiday Monday not. I'm going to be doing a Dancing with Energy in my local town, which is Newbury. I'm going to take a few beginners through energy sensing kind of dance and visualization exercises to help them start connecting with energy in a new way. And I'm doing it in a shopping center because I want it to be, you know, it's easy for us to go and meditate when we're in a retreat or on top of a mountain or in a peaceful environment. And then we come back to normal life and we lose that and we let go of it. And what I want people to learn is how to hold that regardless what they're doing, to be able to be in that state, to be able to manage their own energy and return to that state regardless what's going on around them. So it's going to be done in a shopping center, just as a little experiment. And I'll be there on the Bank Holiday Monday, which is the 28th. And I'm hoping to show people how to sense energies outside of themselves and connect more to their body and reset their nervous system. So that's what I'll be doing on the Bank Holiday Monday. And at least it's indoors because the weather's not looking good right now. We're going to be using headsets, and I had planned an outdoor event, but with the weather, and like I say, look, it's like 8:30. It's almost pitch black already. It's crazy what's happening right now. So if you're in the area, then come and if you email me, I'll let you have the ticket link, and yeah, come and join me on Bank Holiday Monday afternoon. Otherwise, I'll leave you guys all thinking about time, thinking about how you can let go of karma, how we can redefine who we are based on cutting off the past and starting off like a fool, starting their life for the first time, and just start seeing life as an adventure. And, you know, adventures don't mean it's always happy and good luck, but just keep it in perspective, you know. Next time, maybe I'll talk more on this, but there are so many clues in your challenges. Just because you're getting a challenge isn't because you're being punished. That's the good and bad thing I wanted to talk about. If you get a challenge, it's not because you're being punished. It's actually a clue to something. And maybe that's where we'll take our conversation next time. Okay. All right. Lovely to meet you all. If you ever want to join me on Zoom, again, just message me and I'll send you an invite. I'm going to just chat for the next 30 minutes with those on Zoom. And we have just a deeper conversation on these and see what everybody's experienced so that we all get to share. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.